This tutorial is going to demonstrate the process of using master pages in InDesign. Before we get started, let's go ahead and set your units. So in InDesign, before you have created a new document, go to Preferences, Units and Increments, and set your horizontal and vertical units to inches, and hit OK. This should make it so that every time you create a new document, it will default to inches. In the New Document dialog box, go ahead and set the number of pages to 3. Make sure Facing Pages is checked. Facing Pages makes for double-sided books. And let's go ahead and set our margins to 0 because we are going to create our own margins within the document, and say OK. The first thing we are going to do in our new document is create a few layers. So in the Layers palette, there are a couple of ways to create new layers. The first way is that you can click this icon, Create New Layer, and then click on the name of the layer. Once it's highlighted, you can go ahead and type the name of the layer. Let's call this Guides. I'm also going to rename the default layer, Layer 1, to Background. Let's make 2 more layers. Another way to create a new layer is to pull down the options, New Layer. This brings up this dialog box where you can change the color of that layer and you can name it all in one move. So let's call this one Text. And let's create one more layer that we are going to call Images. Go ahead and set the Guides layer current by clicking once on that layer. You'll see that the pen icon is now illuminated, and that means that anything we draw from here on out will be on the Guides layer. Switch over to the Pages palette. Above this bar are your master pages. Go ahead and double-click on a master to bring up a demonstration in our preview pane of the master pages. We are now going to create guidelines on our master pages. The first thing I like to do when using facing pages is to reset the origin, the point from which the rulers measure, to the center intersection of the 2 pages. To do so, if you click and hold your mouse in this square where the rulers intersect and drag, it will snap to the page edges and let go. You will now see that the 0 point is at the center between the 2 pages and the top of this edge is also 0. If we create guides by clicking on a ruler and dragging, you can see the measurements of that guide. I'm now at -1/2 of an inch. If I drag to the right page, I'm at +1/2 of an inch. So I find this a nice way to make sure I'm setting my margins the same on both the left and the right page. Depending on the built-in margins for your printer, you will want to set guidelines to prevent you from putting images beyond the boundaries of your printer's capability. I'm going to go ahead and set these margins at 1/2 of an inch. Notice if I drag my guidelines and I'm not on a page, but I'm over in just outside of the page, the guideline will span all the way across both pages. Let's say that I've already spent some time doodling in my sketchbook and I have a pretty clear concept of what I want my page layout to look like. I'm going to have the main project title here on the left with one large image with a couple of smaller images and some text at the bottom and another large image on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and create a few more guidelines to help me achieve that. You might want to be more precise than I'm going to be in this demonstration. I'm going to create a guideline for my text, a space between my text and the image. If you ever mess up and drop a guideline in a location where you don't want it, go ahead and just come up in the Options ribbon and type in the dimension that you would like it to be. Okay, I have all of my guidelines set. Now I would like to begin creating some text boxes. First, I want to set my text layer current. Return to my layers palette, click on text. I'm going to use my text tool. And for now, I'm just going to type default text. Project title, I will go ahead and set it to the correct appearance. Remember that it's important to use character styles, so I probably at this time want to create a new character style, call it title. I'm realizing that I need a few more guides in order to really make this page layout work. I'm going to go ahead and reset my layer to guides. Since the original guide that I drug in was the edge of the paper, I want to make sure that my text isn't right at the edge, so I want to give myself a little bit of a boundary. I also want some boundaries between the edge of my body text and the edge of my images, so I'm just giving myself a couple of little margins. Okay, now I'm ready to go back to the text layer. I'm going to create another text box, and this is where I will put description about my process or the project, information relating to this particular project. So again, I'm going to make it look the way I want. Okay. In InDesign, it's actually helpful sometimes to put in some placeholder text until you have actually written the text that goes in this location. So if you go to Type, Fill with Placeholder Text, now I have text there so I can see how my page looks. Again, we should create a character style. So with the text box selected, go to your character styles palette, new character style, let's call this one body, and you should see that it has adopted all of the properties of that text. Say OK. Deselect the text. Let's make one more text field. This time we're going to make a page number. So create a text box. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's create a text box. Let's set what we want it to look like. And now go to Type, Insert Special Character, Markers, Current Page Number. And you will see that it creates an A. That's because we are currently on Master Page A. Once we apply this to other pages on our document, it will automatically adopt the number of that page. I'm going to zoom back out. I'd actually like to move this page number to be onto the right side of my document. There's one more step before I'm ready to actually begin working on my document. Since right now I'm just working on the scaffolding for my document, which in InDesign is called the master page. The last thing I would like to do is actually create some filler frames which I can later place images into just to help streamline my workflow. So I'm going to go back to layers, click on images to make that my current layer, come over here to my tools and use the rectangle frame tool. Since this image I would like to actually bleed off of the page, meaning that there's no margin between the edge of the page and the edge of the image, I'm going to make this image span a little bit beyond my margin where I'm going to cut. On the inside though, I'm going to leave some space for my coil binding, my wire spiral binding, or whatever binding I choose. So let's go ahead and make a few of these frames. Now we're ready to start working in our document. This would be a good time to save. Double-click on pages below the bar to start working on actual printed pages. Now I'm on pages 2 and 3. Let's go ahead and place an image first in this lower region of page 2. So I'm going to go File, Place. Just a quick word about how to organize your files. I would highly recommend that you have a folder called Portfolio. Within that folder, you should have a folder for each of the projects that you're going to be representing. And within each of those folders, you probably want to have a very simple way of naming them systematically so that it's easy to keep track of your files. In this case, I am going to demonstrate using student work by Le Lua. I'm going to place image number 2, say OK. The image frames that we created on our master page are going to act like cropping frames for our pictures. So notice my cursor. If I'm outside of an image frame, I have this angle-shaped cursor. If I'm inside of an image frame, it almost looks like my paintbrush is in parentheses. That's what I want. So I'm going to click with the parentheses cursor, and now it has placed that image within the frame, and it's already cropped. If I want to center the image within that frame or enlarge it, I need to hover over it so that I see this bullseye that's the center of the image. Click on that bullseye, and now what it has done is actually selected my image, not the frame. So now I can move the image without changing that frame. I can make it bigger. Center it again within the frame. When I click off of it, my image is still being cropped by that frame, which means this is an easy way to place many images into my document and know that they're all going to be cropped to the exact same size. Let's go ahead and modify the title. When you get into the pages, you will notice I can't click on this title. What I need to do is release the title from the master page so that I can edit it on page 2. So what I do is I hold down Shift and Command key on the Mac, click on the title, and you will see that now I can edit that. So let's go ahead and call this project whatever the name of your project really is. The same thing with my other text. I can hit Shift Command. If you hit the shortcut key Control A, it will select all of the text and then you can start typing. Let's also just check and see how our page number is doing. And indeed, we're getting a 3 because that is actually page 3 here. One last thing, you can make multiple masters. Perhaps each project is going to be run over 6 pages and you only want the title to show up on the first one. So you can make a master, master B, for example, by saying new master. By default it will be called B. You can modify, again, make your guides, make whatever changes you need to. And then you can change by right mouse clicking on one of the pages. You can say apply master to pages. Perhaps for our very first page I want none. Perhaps for the next 2 pages I would want to apply master B. You can tell which master page is applied by this tiny little icon here. This is saying A. If I create 2 new pages with B, now I can see B is the applied master page. That should be enough to get you going.